You're late, Captain Farina. Are you drunk?
My apologies, Colonel. I didn't realize you were in a hurry to die this morning.
Please, Captain. There's no need to be rude. There's no need for any of this. Listen to me, both of you. I mean, we're all reasonable adults here. We can work...
Reasonable, Doctor? I think we've gone well beyond reason now, or at least I know I have. There's only one way to settle this.
I agree. What will it be, swords or pistols?
The cold will likely stiffen our wrists before too long, so sabers wouldn't be very practical. I suggest that we use pistols.
Done.
Stop this, please!
You're here as a witness to see that this is done honourably. That's all you have to do. If you can't manage that, then maybe you should just go and let us resolve this dishonourably.
Have you totally lost your mind?
Quite possibly. No thanks to you. Just bring us the guns. We can get this over with.
Very well, gentlemen. You know how this works. Back to back, 10 paces. 1 shot each. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Dear Salvatore, by the time you read this, I will probably be dead. A point of honour must be satisfied, and nothing short of a duel to the death will do. My opponent is a hero of the Revolution, Colonel Ettore Calvino, a man far more seasoned in the arts of war than I. He believes that I have taken advantage of his cousin, Fosca, who over the last 3 months has come to regard me with an amorous passion. I am writing to you now in order to give my own account of the events leading up to this conflict. I fear that whatever the outcome of this duel tomorrow, my relationship with Fosca will be the subject of much salacious gossip in this small backwater town. I know how these things work. In my own native village, various affairs of the heart, much less remarkable than this, provoked whispered mutterings and giggles for years on end. Already the other soldiers stationed at the barracks are abuzz with speculation, as are the colonel's household staff. I know that if this event goes on to generate any press interest, that I can trust you to see that my perspective is faithfully reported. Also, there are matters troubling my conscience that I wish to confess to somebody before I leave this earth. What I have to say concerns Clara, and if it was made known, would utterly ruin her reputation. But I know I can rely upon you to be discreet about these things, and that you will not judge her too harshly. Besides, I find it impossible to tell the story of Fosca without also telling the story of Clara. The two women, though polar opposites, are inextricably linked in my mind. Anyway, enough preliminary. Time is scarce. Where to begin? How about that rainy afternoon in April when, fresh from an extended sick leave, I first came to call upon you and Clara in Milan? Yes, that seems like a good place to start. I'd just turned 28, and I'd served in the army for most of my adult life. I had sustained nothing more serious than a few minor cuts and bruises over the course of fighting in the wars of unification, and then, after drunkenly celebrating the end of these conflicts with my fellow officers, I fell from my horse, dislocating a shoulder in the process. Of course, I didn't tell this to my parents or even my sister when I returned to the family farm to recuperate. They saw it as proof of how brave I was, incessantly gushing and fussing over their homecoming hero. Now I'd had the opportunity to travel and visit the more cosmopolitan cities of the world. I found this small-town life with its streets of mud, cramped hovels, and simple, small-minded conversation stifling. As soon as my health permitted it, I set off to Milan. I knew that the regiment would recall me in a few months, and being closer to headquarters, perhaps I could hasten their decision in some way. Over the last month, I'd been drawing a handsome sum from the state's coffers, and this inaction, rewarded so generously, was making me anxious. Also, I knew you had settled there, and I wanted to spend the remaining days of my leave in more sophisticated, urbane company. When I arrived at your doorstep, wet and bedraggled, my first thought was that perhaps I'd arrived at the wrong address. From the outside, it seemed like the sort of huge, stately residence that would belong to a visiting aristocrat. From behind the door, I could hear the sound of a piano, and I laughed slightly, for I recognized the piece as Chopin's Raindrop Prelude. In all my life, I had never heard this instrument played with such impeccable precision. And yet, this was not merely impressive on a technical level. I sensed a tangible emotion infused in the performance. So, rather than interrupt the recital, I stood there, in the rain, listening at the door until the piece was concluded. Oh, bravo. Well, can't stand around here all day.
Coming. How may I help you, sir?
Words cannot do justice to the beauty of the woman who opened the door. When I first beheld her, I felt an uncanny sensation, as if I were gazing upon some fey creature from another world. I must have stood there gaping at her for a full 5 seconds at least. She was dressed conservatively, the kind of frock that a married woman pushing 40 might wear. But her raven-coloured hair fell down almost to her waist and was a mass of wild, ragged curls. Her face, it was a doll's face. Elfin features, petite lips, and the most peculiar coloured eyes, somewhere between pale blue and light grey. Even now I can't say precisely what shade they were. The complexion of her skin was so smooth and unblemished, it was hard to determine her age by looking. She was anywhere between 16 and 21. And that voice, so soft, so sweet. Who, I wondered, was this domesticated wood nymph standing before me?
Excuse me, sir. May I help you?
Oh, sorry about that. I was somewhere else. Must be tired from all that travel. I came quite a long distance to get here.
Whom do you seek?
Does a Salvatore Venuti live here? I served in his regiment during the war. Wrote to him about a week ago. He is expecting me.
You were Captain Farina then?
Yes, I am.
He mentioned you might pop by one of these days. Please, come in.
Thank you.
I'm Clara, by the way.
Giorgio, pleased to meet you. Was that you playing on the piano earlier?
Why, yes,
You play exquisitely, really, you do. I only heard a bit of it, but it was just wonderful. That was the Raindrop tune by Chopin, wasn't it?
Yes, it seemed kind of appropriate, given the weather we've been having lately. You're very kind to compliment my playing, but I feel I'm still learning, really. May I take your coat?
Oh, yes, you certainly can. Here you are.
Sal is upstairs, third door on the left. He's working on the novel right now, but he's been at it for 5 hours straight. I'm sure he'll be glad for a break. Tell him to come down. I'll make a pot of tea.
Much obliged. I'll just check on him now.
Yes, what is it?
Sal, it's me, Giorgio.
Giorgio! Come in, my man! Oh, how are you then? You seem to have regained your strength.
Well, there's still a bit of stiffness in the shoulder, and I'm not up to carrying anything too heavy with this arm yet. But I'm on the mend. I'll be back on duty soon enough.
But not too soon, I trust.
No, I'll have time to sample all the pleasures of Milan before I go, have no fear of that.
Capital.
Must say, you've certainly moved up in the world. Did you have a rich uncle who died? Or did you just marry really, really well?
Oh, this isn't my place, Giorgio. You think I could afford all this on an accountant's salary? No, I'm lodging here with 2 other moderately well-off gentlemen, a civil servant and a lawyer from Marseille.
The doll at the piano, is she yours then?
Clara! No, she's the lawyer's wife.
Lucky man.
I'll say. Stay for dinner, you'll see just how lucky. She's as much a prodigy in the kitchen as she is at the piano.
You can't afford a servant then?
We have a maid, she prepares most of the meals. But Clara likes to cook. It's Sunday, and she always prepares something special on Sunday.
I wouldn't be an imposition then.
Heavens, no. Her husband's in Rome on business and has taken her child with him. Father-son, bonding time and all that. Our other resident man of letters is out of town visiting relatives. It'll be just the 3 of us.
Wait, did you just say she had a son? How old is this Clara?
Well, she's 26. Old enough, I'd say.
Oh. I just wouldn't have thought to look at her she was that old.
Not a day over 17, wouldn't you say?
Probably.
Bedazzled, aren't you, old man? Don't worry, same thing happened to me when I first met her. But just talk with her a while and you'll get over it. She's quite down to earth, really. Come downstairs, we'll get better acquainted.
And so, over tea, we discussed all that had happened in our lives since the war. Though I rejoiced in hearing of your recent publishing successes, and I uttered all the right polite words of encouragement, my mind was riveted to Clara's interjections. The way in which she spoke of the new artistic radicals who were challenging conventional Italian notions of morality in literature, The way she talked of your freelance work in the context of contemporary trends, her balanced measure of praise and criticism, it indicated that the woman possessed an intellect of cultured refinement and discriminating taste. And any excuse to focus my gaze upon that exquisite face seemed like a heaven-sent opportunity.
You should definitely accept the commission from Figaro magazine. Your writing would fit right in there.
Well, I'm not sure about that. The Figaro crowd are so strident, and they clearly have an agenda. I mean, I'm not interested in pandering to traditionalists, but I don't want to tear down tradition. As far as I'm concerned, the people who lapped up the maudlin drivel spewed out by the likes of Prati and Aliardi can have their fun, if that's what they want.
Well, strident they may be, but I don't believe they are destructive in their intent. Praga, Dossi, Penombre, even Tarchetti, they're striking out with satirical wit against conservative mediocrities like Manzoni, but no intelligent, reasonable person would perceive them as a serious threat to the establishment.
I wouldn't be too sure about that, Clara. Are you familiar with A Noble Folly?
No, I have heard of it, but I can't say I've read it as yet.
I've read it. I've met the author too. He'd originally volunteered for the army around the same time I enlisted, but after being sent off to deal with the brigandage in the south, he was discharged for insubordination. In several of the barracks I was stationed, the senior officers would light bonfires of the man's books and any other writing they could find lying around that protested against the war.
Really?
Oh yes, it was supposed to set an example. Personally, I think it just gave their work an added notoriety, which enticed a lot of angry young men who wouldn't have bothered to read it otherwise.
Was your copy consigned to the Flames, Captain?
Giorgio, please. No, I managed to save it.
How?
I removed the pages from a Manzoni anthology and then glued the pages of Tarchetti's book to the spine. They didn't give it a second glance when they searched my quarters.
And what became of the Manzoni pages?
I'm ashamed to say they were relegated to outhouse fodder. Did the job much better than the coarse army issue material, I must say.
How appropriate!
Dinner came, and I realised you had not exaggerated her culinary genius. Gnocchi, formed in the Parisienne style, topped with a richly seasoned sauce containing eastern spices I could not identify, washed down with the best Merlot I've ever tasted in my life. My mouth waters just thinking about it. As you breathlessly regaled her with war stories, I affected an air of modest reserve. But truthfully, I felt a surge of pleasure each time her eyes widened in wonder at tales of my bravery on the front line.
So, there I am, lying there, right? My leg practically blasted off by the cannonball, paralysed by pain and fear, bleeding everywhere.
Not too much detail, please, Sal. The lady's trying to eat her dinner. This is a lovely Merlot, by the way. Could I trouble you for a top-up?
No trouble at all. Just say when.
When? Thank you.
Anyway, as I was saying, there I was, lying there, mortally wounded, when they sounded the retreat. The rest of the battalion bolted from the scene at once, but this man here took off his jacket, tied up my bleeding stump, and at great risk to his own life, hauled me back to camp.
Well, I hauled you 2/3 of the way there. Then another member of the platoon saw what I was doing and fell back to help out. You're making too much of this, Sal. I didn't think about it. It was something instinctive. Just seemed the right thing to do at the time.
Oh, stop it, Giorgio.
Stop what?
False modesty doesn't become you at all. Besides, if, as you say, this act of kindness was an unthinking reflex action on your part, that actually makes it all the more remarkable. In the heat of the moment, aren't most people's instincts more selfish than that?
My point exactly.
You're very perceptive, Clara.
I try my best.
In that moment, she'd seen through me, utterly. But this only made her more attractive to me. As the evening drew to a close, I took my leave in a state of barely repressed euphoria, the likes of which I hadn't felt since the early days of my adolescence. 4 hours in her company was all it took for me to fall for her, as I'd never fallen for anyone. I had known women who were her match for beauty, intelligence, or talent, but never one who embodied all these qualities with the same grace and purity. Could she really exist? That night, as I walked the streets to the small, dingy apartment that was to be my home until I was reassigned, a firm resolve overcame me. I must see her again, if only to confirm that this paragon of the female sex was indeed real. Over the next couple of weeks, I invented pretexts to visit you, always making sure to arrive at your doorstep at least 20 minutes before you were due to arrive home from work, so that I could converse with Clara alone. The maid would let me in, and I would come upon Clara knitting beside a window that looked out upon the courtyard, or reading a novel on the balcony, or attending to the fuchsias and geraniums in the conservatory. To see her look up from whatever she was doing, smile sweetly, and then say my name in that soft, melodious voice never failed to quicken my heartbeat. Then we would sit and talk. The beauty of the natural world fascinated Clara, so tales of my country upbringing had the allure of the exotic to her, a child of the city. Occasionally, she would be coaxed into playing the piano and singing. Those were the sweetest days of all.
Mistress mine, where are you roaming? Stay and hear your true love's coming. That can sing both high and low. Trip no further, pretty sweeting. Journey's end in lovers' meeting. Every wise man's son doth know. What is love? 'Tis not hereafter. Present mirth hath present laughter. What's to come is still unsure. In delay there lies no plenty. Come and kiss me, sweet and 20. Youth's a stuff will not endure. Youth's a stuff will not endure.
Eventually, it got to the point where I could no longer plausibly deny that I was visiting specifically to see her.
Captain Farina, Signor Venuti is at work today.
Yes, I'm aware of that fact. I'm here to see Madame Dupont. Is she in?
She is. This will be an unexpected pleasure for her, I'm sure. Come in, Captain.
Thank you.
Giorgio! This is a surprise. What are you doing here so early?
Not interrupting anything, I hope.
No, not at all.
I just popped by because, well, I'd like your help with a personal project of mine. You'll probably think it's a bit eccentric.
Really? How so?
This book is a collection, souvenirs of my travels. You see, whenever I visit somewhere interesting, I pick a flower that catches my eye, then I dry it, press it, put it in this book. Then when I'm in a contemplative mood, I look back over it, think of all the places I've been, people I've met. Here, have a look.
Oh my. Some of these are really just so beautiful. What's this yellow one here?
Coltsfoot. It was the only flower adorning this dried-out, desolate vineyard that I plucked it from on the road to Milan last year.
And this rose, here at the very start?
I was 15, seated on a park bench, brooding over the demise of my first fumbling love affair, and this small girl, seeing how terribly depressed I was, plucked a nearby rose, handed it to me, and told me to cheer up. Touching moment, but so absurd at the same time. I wanted to preserve it in some way. Soon after, I hit upon the idea that it could be the start of a collection, markers of points in my life I want to remember.
Interesting. But where do I figure into all this?
These last few weeks, with you and Sal, have been the happiest of my life since the war. I couldn't wish for more congenial company. When I'm back on active duty, I'll miss the sights of this fair city, and I'll miss all the conversations we had about art and nature. I'll miss hearing you play. So I was wondering if I could trouble you for one of the flowers from your greenhouse as a memento of these days.
I would be honoured, Giorgio. The primroses are blooming at the moment, so are the azaleas.
Don't actually have any azaleas in my collection. Perhaps that should be corrected.
All right then, azaleas it is. But first, tell me something, Giorgio.
What?
How is it that a man like you became a soldier?
A man like me? What is that supposed to mean?
You're no dumb brute. You're sensitive, educated. You could have done anything, but you chose to enlist in the military. Why?
I wanted more than what life in the provinces could give me. I wanted to see the world. But my family weren't wealthy, my options were limited. I suppose there was an element of vanity to it as well. I thought that I could be a hero, that bravery on the battlefield would set me apart from ordinary men.
Was it everything you hoped for, Giorgio?
Not really, but it's hard to imagine doing anything else now. My family's farm isn't doing so well at the moment. They've become dependent on the money I send them. So I'll probably have to stay inscribed in the regiment's rolls for another 2 years at least. After that, well, I don't know.
I see. Here you are then, for the days to come.
Thank you, Clara. So, the days passed, the rains ended, the mayflowers bloomed, the birds resumed their song, and on the streets everywhere I saw couples walking arm in arm, laughing and smiling. My soul was in torment as all about me expressions of love were being extolled so freely. I no longer felt comfortable holding myself back from expressing my deepest yearnings to Clara, carrying on this pretense of friendship with all its neutered affection. I resolved to write her a letter, in which I would lay bare the full extent of my desire. Better, I reasoned, to risk driving her away with honesty, have her repulsed by my lust, than continue as we had done, in this unnatural state of awkward, carefully disciplined intimacy. My beloved Clara. Yes, beloved, for that is what you are to me now. From the moment we first met, my every waking hour has been filled with thoughts of you, be it the sublime, crystalline clarity of your voice as you sit at the piano singing a light-hearted air, the smile that lights up your eyes as you rise to greet a visitor, the sharp witticism with which you can hold your own in a conversation with a man. Every minute in your company is an intoxicating delight, just to gaze upon your beauty, which I struggle to believe is really of this earth, fills me with a warm sense of contentment. At each parting, I feel a profound longing to see you again, and this has only gotten worse as we have become better acquainted. I have become consumed with a desire to learn everything about you, to hold you in my arms and know you completely, body and soul, to give all of myself to you as well. If you feel as I do, then come to me at the address below. Otherwise, you may write to inform me of your disinterest, and I will trouble you no more. Yours, to do with as you wish, Giorgio. The next morning I approached your doorstep. The sky was clear, the sun spilt into the street, which bustled with swarms of sparrows. The milkmen's carts screeched upon their unsteady wheels, coachmen cracked their whips, children chased each other about the street, laughing happily. All was brightness and gaiety as, with trembling fingers, I bent to put the letter under the door. No sooner had I done so than it opened, and the object of my idolatry stood before me.
Giorgio! What a surprise! Is something the matter? Giorgio, are you alright?
Clara, I...
Yes, Giorgio?
I'm sorry. I should never have come. Goodbye. I turned and ran, bolted from the scene like a madman. I retreated to my cold, lonely room, certain that I'd ruined everything, staring at the wall and brooding on my folly, recalling the music that first drew me to her. Each sad note echoed in my mind, as if to say, "See, this is what happens when you want too much." My self-pitying stupor was interrupted by a loud, angry knock at the door. Yes?
It's me, Giorgio. Let me in.
Clara.
What did you mean to send me this letter? Is this what you say to every impressionable young maiden so that they'll leap into bed with you?
No, Clara. I swear that I've never felt this way about any woman before.
Oh, really? Look me in the eyes and say that again.
I have never felt this way about any woman before.
Oh my God. You actually meant it then.
Every word of it.
Have you known many women then?
I've been with about a dozen women in my life so far. But it never lasted for more than 2 weeks. Either we got bored with each other or they were only interested in one night. There was never anything more than a physical attraction between us. No love.
I see.
Look, do you want a drink?
What do you have?
Brandy?
All right.
Here.
Thank you. Until today, no one has ever written me a love letter. I wondered if it was something that only happened in romantic novels, not in real life.
I would have thought that a woman as beautiful as yourself would have had many admirers.
I was married at 16, Giorgio. I was a mother at 18. I dare say most men would be deterred by these facts.
So young. Did your parents choose your husband for you?
No, not exactly. When I was 14, my aunt died unexpectedly. She didn't leave a will, and my extended family commenced squabbling over her remaining possessions. My parents hired a young man in his 20s, an immigrant, barely out of law school and going cheap, to mediate this conflict. This is how I first met Armand. He somehow managed to bring the family together and resolve things peacefully. He became a regular guest at our house after that. At dinner parties hosted by my parents, he would never condescend to me, always talked to me as if I were an adult, and this flattered me. But I had no idea he had any romantic feeling towards me until he proposed to me on my 16th birthday. I don't know if I loved him then, but I admired him a great deal, so I accepted. After that, I just quietly settled into married life, without any grandiose courtship rituals leading up to it.
Do you love him now?
I don't know. I have no reason not to love him. He's a kind man, a good father. He has never struck out at me or raised his voice to me once. Even when we argue, he never raises his voice. He is not extravagant in his affections. Still, he's tender and gentle with me. He has a brilliant legal mind. I've never ceased to be in awe of his intellect and strong sense of justice, but if I really love him, how could I want more? Why should I ache so for the romance I've never known? Your letter, you said what was in my heart, what I have never dared to say, what I have struggled to admit even to myself. You are such an intriguing puzzle, Captain Farina. You have the dashing, handsome countenance of a storybook hero, but there is such a deep sadness there in your eyes. I know that you've killed men, but when you talk to me, you seem so soft, so gentle. When I first met you, I knew you were unlike any other man I'd met, and unlike any man I could ever have imagined. When you came to me for the flower in the greenhouse, I knew that if I were free, I could fall in love with such a man. And though I know so little of you, I want to know more. I want to know everything.
Oh, Clara.
Stop! Before we take things any further, I must define my terms.
Terms?
I have a son, Etienne. I love him more than anything else in the world. I will not abandon him for you. There can be no long-term future for us. If it were just Armand, then perhaps there could have been. But as things stand, I can only love you for a short time. Then I must leave you, resume my duties as wife and mother. And I will be the one who decides when it is the right time to end this. Do you agree to these terms?
Why, yes. Better to love you for a short while than to never love you at all.
Thank you for being so understanding. I would like to make love with you now, Giorgio.
Now? I mean, are you sure you're quite ready?
Yes, I'm ready. Draw the curtains and light the candle by the bed. Now please, help me to undress.
Though it was afternoon, we made love by candlelight. So it began, and so it would continue. Clara would come to visit me at my room, usually around lunchtime, often bringing a picnic hamper full of delectable goodies along with her, and jokingly inform me of some errand that she had told the household would take up her whole afternoon. She was really quite an inventive liar, and it wasn't always an act when I gasped at her audacity.
Greetings, Captain Farina.
Why, Madame Dupont, what brings you to my humble abode on a day such as this?
Well, past Porta Magenta, on the right, runs a beautiful stream crossed by a narrow footbridge no wider than 2 spans. I told the staff that I was headed out there today to sketch it. Sal offered to accompany me on my journey, but I insisted there could be no distractions while I work. Here, have a look at my sketchbook. I sat up late last night rendering the bridge in pencil and charcoal, so I had something to show them all when I returned.
Oh, Clara, this is possibly the most inventive lie you've come up with yet. Certainly the prettiest.
I'm very wicked, aren't I?
Terribly.
It was the most tiring lie of all so far. I wouldn't have made it this far without 3 cups of coffee. So, gently does it to start with, all right?
As you wish. Then I'd draw the curtains, light the candles, undress her, she would undress me. We would make love with wild abandon. Despite her years of experience, Clara would have at it with an adolescent vigour and sense of wonderment, as if it were all a joyous new discovery to her. Though her attitude puzzled me, it also gratified my ego immeasurably. I felt confident and strong beside her, as I never have with other women.
Oh, Giorgio, I now know why the poets refer to it as the little death. My heart is so full of happiness right now. I'm afraid that it would burst and then I'll die right here in your arms. What would you do then?
I don't know. I'd probably die right along with you.
Good answer. If only I had known you when I was 16, how happy I would have been to give you my heart, pure and intact, to offer up to you all the bounty of my youth. I wonder how you would have shaped my heart, how I would have loved and heeded you then. They never gave me enough time as a girl. I had to grow up so fast. But I suppose I'm making up for lost time now. Oh, how I do blather on.
That's all right, I like to hear you blathering.
Dear Giorgio, so patient, so indulgent of my whims. You can have your fill now, my love. Hold nothing back.
As you decree, so it shall be done. Afterwards, we would have a lavish, indulgent picnic together on the floor, My apartment would be strewn with ribbons and wrappers from various expensive chocolates and sweets that I brought for Clara. She would remain nude throughout our little feasts, and we would often wash down our lunch with wine or spirits. Yet her demeanour was that of a child at play, setting upon these confectionery delights with all the enthusiasm of a little girl on Christmas morning, telling silly jokes and giggling as we ate.
And what has my darling Giorgio got for me today? And wrapped so densely too. Oh, really, there's enough paper here for 6 presents.
Didn't want to make it too easy for you.
Oh, you fiend. Yes, my favourite! Oh, you got the rose and the lemon both. Yes!
Would you like some cognac with your Turkish delight, madam?
It will make me awfully sleepy. You've exhausted me ever so much this afternoon. Oh, but when you look at me like that, how can I possibly resist?
You know what, Clara? I had a thought.
Really? Does that happen often, dear?
Yes, surprisingly enough. I've been thinking, it's spring. We should go to the bridge by the stream, for real this time.
That's not a bad idea, really. There's some herbs that grow by the water this time of year that you can eat. I'd like to gather some for the kitchen. Oh, and could I bring my paints? Attempt to capture the scene in watercolour while I'm there? Or would that bore you?
No, not at all. Here.
Thank you. Salud.
Salud! It'll be interesting to compare the live rendering to what you sketched from memory. And the funny thing is, I've been to Porto Magenta many times, but I don't think I've ever been to that place before.
Really? That's incredible. Well then, I will be your guide. Oh, and I want you to pose on the bridge, in your captain's uniform, staring off into the middle distance, with a rose in your hand. You do look so adorable when you're in a pensive frame of mind.
But what will the household think when they see it?
Oh, make your hair yellow and your eyes blue so they won't know it's you. Only I will know who that sad yet impossibly handsome soldier is. Mwah.
Clara would wind down and become languid as we bathed, assuming a meditative calm as she meticulously cleansed herself, barely speaking a word. We'd finish off the afternoon with a pleasant stroll along the boulevards or by going out to a small cafe, as if we were a normal, respectable couple. Then her demeanour would be the very model of ladylike poise and dignity, as we seriously exchanged intimate life stories or engaged in conversation about religion, politics, and art. It was amazing how this one woman could be so many women over the course of a single day. In the unlikely event that I live to grow old, that trip with Clara to Porto Magenta is a memory I will treasure until the end of my days. I'm glad she got about the business of painting before the weather changed so drastically. Her take on the human form was so impressionistic that I doubt anyone would have recognized me, even if she hadn't changed the shade of my hair. But she captured the glory of the landscape around me in rich detail. Once she'd finished up on the canvas, I received a lesson in the finer points of herb lore as we walked by the stream. Clara was beaming, as this time she was the one leading me into an unexplored realm, imparting to me her knowledge of a subject in which she was far more experienced than I.
Aha! Now this one here is very versatile, but you have to pull it up roots and all. Now, you can season lamb with the leaves. It is something like rosemary, not as pungent though. Oh, and the roots, it has a sweetish taste, like ginger, but without the sting. Here, I'll get the dirt off. Try some. Go on.
That's actually really good. What do you do with it then?
Uses it in a sauce with some tarty fruit. Add some excitement to a blind meat like chicken. Oh, it's better with rabbit though.
Gosh. Clara, how did a woman as beautiful as you get to be so smart?
I think it was revenge. Definitely revenge.
Revenge? Whatever do you mean?
Everyone expects a pretty girl to be stupid. Well, I had to prove them all wrong, you see. No, it can't be! Oh, it's been fine all week and I haven't brought my umbrella.
Damn. Hang on, wait a minute. Over there, looks like a caretaker shed. Make a dash for it. I'll go back and grab the canvas. Meet you over there. Fortunately for us, the door was unlocked and nobody else was present. I managed to save the painting and get under cover before the heavens could do their worst. Clara was very grateful that I managed to save it. As we sheltered from the rain, amidst the smell of damp earth and rotting wood, in a place that was probably infested with all manner of crawling vermin, she made love to me with an exquisite tenderness.
Giorgio, hand me my sketchbook.
What?
My sketchbook, Giorgio. Get it from my bag. And my pencil. And a bit of charcoal. Just do it.
All right. Here. What are you doing?
I've got to do this while the moment is still vivid in my mind. See, I'm expanding the landscape here. Now the shed is in the picture, to the side of the bridge. Now the rain is falling. There. Now I have a painting to commemorate a glorious morning with you, walking arm in arm by the water. And I have a sketch in pencil and charcoal in remembrance of this grey afternoon, sheltering with you and making love in this rickety old shed. I will never forget this day.
She kissed me then. I swear, I never saw her so happy as she was at that moment. If only such moments would fully yield to description, but alas, words are so inadequate in preserving this fleeting beauty, and even Clara's pretty pictures are no more than a faint echo. 3 days later, I received the letter that would bring this idyll tumbling down.
You are hereby summoned to return to duty, and in view of your health, you are assigned to the General Staff in the 4th Division. You will report to the barracks within 5 days.
Giorgio!
I'm coming.
Giorgio? You look so sad. Whatever's the matter?
The honeymoon is over, Clara. See for yourself.
Oh my. Where is this place they're sending you? What are you going to be doing there?
Small town near Parma. Probably just border sentry work and some light administrative duties. Clara.
I'm sorry, Giorgio. I knew this moment would come soon. I prepared for it, made a nice little speech and everything, but I can't be calm about this, Giorgio. Not now. I love you so.
Shh. There, it's all right. I love you too, Clara.
Will you be heartbroken to leave me?
Of course I will be.
Then what are we to do? What happens to us now? Is this goodbye?
I promised that would be for you to decide.
I shouldn't have asked that of you. This is too much for one person to decide. I suppose the most sensible thing to do would be to end it now. You're going far away. You might not get leave for months. My aunt and Etienne return from Rome next week. and we haven't had enough time together for any bitterness to set in, we'd be walking away with nothing but fond memories of each other.
So, do you want to be sensible about this? It's over?
I've been sensible most of my life, Giorgio. This is so... Oh, no. Not this time. I'm not ready to let you go yet. Just this once, I want to go a little further out onto the limb.
So what are we going to do?
I would like to continue on until December. Write to me from where you are stationed. Whenever you can get leave, come to me here in Milan and I will find a way to see you. When the year is out, then we'll say goodbye. What do you say?
I can live with that. Already I've spent more time in your company than I have with any other woman. From now until Christmas, I'll treasure every precious stolen moment we have together.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Giorgio. When do you leave?
Train tomorrow night, at the latest. It's always best to be a bit early.
Indeed. Understand. Well then, let's see. Why don't you make love to me now? Then I'll head out straight away, pick up some things from the market and head back home. You come round for dinner and you can say your farewells to Sal while you're there. I'll make something with the herbs we picked up at Porta Magenta, that loving harvest.
That sounds like a most sensible plan. To journey by rail, one experiences the full giddiness of flight. Since science has created this means of locomotion, one can almost say that man has grown wings. Though my heart was heavy, I spent the next 6 hours in a sort of sweet rapture, gazing out the window, my soul lost in nature. How the horizon seemed to wheel about me, a glorious phantasmagoria of trees, meadows, rivers, houses. The bountiful fields of Lombardy are as peaceful and serene as its sky, and I passed through this wondrous landscape as if in a dream. All of this was in stark contrast to my final destination. It was a cramped, monotonous town, placed next to a riverbed that is almost always dry. The environs are some sort of moor, a broad plain so poorly cultivated that the eye is greeted only by a few stunted elms and stubbornly tenacious mulberry bushes. Any village in Lombardy would offer a less unpleasant sojourn than this tiny collection of hovels, whose strategic position, near to the Alps, recommended it as the seat of a military division. Having spent a restless night in a most uncomfortable inn by the railway station, I spent the next morning inspecting the tedious surrounds, before visiting the commanding officer to whom I had been assigned, the aforementioned Colonel Calvino.
Enter.
Captain Farina reporting for duty, sir.
At ease, Captain. You'll soon learn that out here there is little cause to stand on ceremony. Our situation is such that we might as well be living on the Barbary coast. Why, we're little better than amongst the Redskins. I would prefer it if you speak frankly to me at all times when you are in the barracks. Save the regimental airs and graces for the days you're assigned to stand guard at the border. You'll need to cling to protocol then just to stay sane. Only the most desperate and disreputable souls pass through this godforsaken place. That is, when anybody comes here at all. Here. Your duty roster. Do you need anything explained?
No, sir, it seems quite straightforward to me.
Good. Then I will show you to your quarters. I doubt you will find more comfortable lodging in the whole town. Where did you stay last night?
The Hunter's Rest by the train station.
My condolences.
Colonel?
Yes, what is it?
The way these buildings are designed, it seems unusual for a barracks.
This used to be a school, back when the harvests were good and there were enough families living in the area to justify having a school. You know how it is, the state's purse strings have been a little tighter since the war. It was cheaper for the army to convert this building than to construct a new base from scratch.
I see.
The old assembly hall is now our officers' mess, as you will discover this evening.
Dining with the regiment turned out to be a surprisingly relaxed and informal affair.
These are your colleagues. Gentlemen, go around the table clockwise and introduce yourselves.
Major Blear.
Captain Chiani.
Lieutenant Vallone.
Lieutenant Amato.
Lieutenant Piastra.
And I'm Dr. Antonelli. At your service, sir. You see, our meals are rather modest. We get all the worst ingredients for cooking. Little grows up here, so most of our food has to be freighted in. Fruit wouldn't last the journey. Nonetheless, I have endeavoured to maintain a balanced menu with plenty of hard vegetables. You will not contract scurvy during your stay with us, Captain.
I'm relieved to hear that, Doctor. Colonel, I notice there is another place set beside you. Are you expecting someone else this evening?
Possibly, but not likely. I have a cousin who resides with me here at the barracks, but the poor woman's health is so delicate she usually takes meals in her room. I could send her to stay with a family nearby who would take really good care of her, I'm sure, but she is all the family I have left in the world now, and at my age one becomes such a creature of habit.
You've done the right thing, sir. I think this alpine air will do her a world of good.
Yes, Fosca has improved considerably since the move.
Fosca, that is her name then. Unusual?
It's actually quite common in the province of Romagna where we grew up. She was named for her great-grandmother, who is still fondly remembered there for her charitable works.
Interesting. So it was for the next fortnight. Her seat remained empty, yet her place was set and a fresh flower stood in one of the glasses. Where did these flowers come from? And why, always, was her seat located next to mine? Now on one side, now upon the other. For reasons I cannot fathom, this unsettled me. That at any moment she could come into the room and sit down beside me. Occasionally, our dining would be interrupted by the sound of music coming from down the hallway. Everyone else at the table acted as if this were perfectly normal, occasionally making crude jokes at the expense of Fosca. Inwardly, I was appalled at the colonel's lax discipline, that he would allow his subordinates to talk so freely about his own family. But whenever he spoke of Fosca, he seemed as weary of her idiosyncrasies as of his assigned duties in this backwater outpost, and just let it slide with a wry smile.
There she goes again.
Another cheerful ditty from Signora Fosca.
I actually think her playing is rather good.
I agree, she's pounding those keys far too hard, but I haven't heard one note out of place.
But always these relentlessly gloomy pieces.
Indeed. Doesn't she know anything lighter?
True. Rest assured I shall speak to her about this after dinner.
Colonel, if you don't mind my asking, what exactly is wrong with Signora Fosca?
What is not wrong with Signora Fosca?
In all seriousness, the woman is epileptic. A situation exacerbated by the hysteria so fashionable amongst young ladies these days, and a case of extrapulmonary tuberculosis. That is to say, not the infectious kind. So if she ever does grace us with her presence at dinner, you'll have nothing to worry about.
She also has a perpetually sick frame of mind. If she didn't have all these ailments, I'm sure she'd invent something else.
Come now, Colonel, that's really too harsh.
Is it, Doctor? Captain Gianni, could you pass the salt, please?
The following evening, my dinner was interrupted in a much more disturbing fashion.
Verena, could I interest you in a game of backgammon after dinner?
Only if it's not for stakes.
Not a betting man, then?
No, I'm afraid not.
Very well, then.
Don't trouble yourself, Colonel. I will see to it.
Tell me, Captain Farina, do you like to read?
Read? Why, yes, I do like to read.
Fosca, she also likes to read. The woman devours books as men devour tobacco. I suppose that's only natural for someone who spends as much time in bed as she does. Unfortunately, there isn't a library here on this Tartar steppe. Would you have any books she could borrow? Something pleasant, perhaps, to take her mind off things?
I brought a novel by Rousseau and a couple by La Fontaine. I would be happy to lend them to Signora Fosca, though I can't promise she would enjoy them.
I'm sure she will relish anything in print, provided it has an element of the fanciful or romantic to it. Her poor little mind can't handle anything scientific or practical, but fiction is a tonic to her troubled soul.
So, I handed over my meagre collection of literature to the Colonel, and he passed them along to his ailing cousin. The man was wrong about Fosca relishing anything in print. The next evening at dinner, the doctor returned one of the La Fontaine pieces, Confessions from the Tomb, to me. Fosca had seen the title, seethed with rage, and tossed it aside without reading it. She threw it with such force that some pages came loose from the spine. I suppose it was rather stupid of me to lend it to a sick woman anyway, but the Colonel had voiced no objection. Indeed, that night the whole table had a jolly good laugh at how sensitive she was. I knew that they were starved for entertainment out here, but still, this seemed a senselessly cruel jest to me. A few days later, my curiosity about this mysterious woman was satisfied. Having returned from 6 hours standing at the border post, waiting to check the papers of people who never came through, I received a summons from the doctor to visit Fosca in her chambers.
I suggest that you prepare yourself for the shock of your life, Captain. Just as there is beauty that defies description, so there is ugliness, so singular, words simply cannot do it justice.
Such is the case with Signora Fosca, I presume.
Quite so. Although she is accustomed to getting queer looks from people, I say this more for your benefit, so that you may converse with her in a state resembling dignity.
Has her illness made her deformed, then?
No. There is nothing unusual about the composition of her physiognomy. All the parts are in their proper place. The symmetry of her face is recognisably human. There are no unsightly scars. But the pallor of her skin, the texture of her hair, her emaciated figure, she resembles one of the walking dead.
Very well, then. I will try not to stare too hard.
Good man. It might seem a small thing, but I have a feeling this visit will mean the world to her. It is not very often that she gets the opportunity to meet new people. Good afternoon, Signora. I brought a friend with me today. This is Captain Giorgio Farina, the bookworm of the regiment.
The doctor did not exaggerate the wretchedness of Fosca's condition. I could not stop my jaw from dropping at the sight of the woman seated before me on a sofa. It was as if I were gazing upon a corpse, dressed up in ladies' finery, the stench of the grave masked by sweet perfume. She was unnaturally thin. Her cheekbones and temples protruded frightfully. Her hair had the brittle consistency of straw and looked liable to fall out at any moment. Her hands were skeletal claws, and her eyes a dark shade of brown that was almost black. Her penetrating gaze, as she looked me over, coolly assessing my discomfort, was even more unsettling than her ugliness.
My, Doctor. Your friend does seem to blink a lot. It's all right, Captain. I don't mind if you stare. Why don't you come sit beside me here? Take a good long look. There. Now look me direct in the face. Take as long as you need. Better now?
Yes, thank you, Signora. I hope I did not offend you.
No, you handled it much better than most. I wanted to meet with you personally, to thank you for the books. They were a great comfort to me in this time of melancholy, when I could do little else but read. Here, you can have them back now. I was particularly enraptured by the new Eloise. I had always been meaning to get around to reading it. I had heard it described so often in the newspapers.
You could keep it a while longer, if you wish.
Whatever for?
To reflect upon it. go over the passages that you find especially thought-provoking?
I believe that reflecting upon stories, analysing them, only serves to neuter their emotional impact. I read not to learn, but to forget, to soar above the drab confines of my life, to acquaint myself with the joys that the world bestows upon the fortunate, and delight in the echo of their happiness.
I understand. To read by heart, not by the head. It has a special charm all of its own.
Indeed. I would go further than that. I would say that every book that is not diverting is ultimately a failure. The goal of every literary work should not be camouflaged instructions, but to excite the spirit, gladden the soul of the reader. I detest moral polemics and metaphysical treatises, disguised as fiction.
I'm not sure I'd go that far. The instructive surely has its place.
Well, that man Rousseau, so virtuous in his books, exposed 5 children to the grind of the streets of Paris.
I had heard that. But the man is one thing, Doctor, the work quite another.
Indeed. Still, let's not go any further down that slippery slope. It would be ever so dull. Have you had time to get acquainted with the town, Captain?
I'm afraid I haven't had much time for sightseeing. From what little I saw of it on the day of my arrival, I rather share your cousin's opinion.
That it is little better than a village on the Barbary coast.
Pretty much.
Have you been to the gardens by the cemetery?
No?
Have you been to the ruined castle?
There's a castle?
Good Lord, man! Did you walk through the village with your eyes closed?
I was somewhat fatigued from the train. Perhaps I did sleepwalk some of the way over here to the barracks.
I asked my cousin to escort me to the castle this evening, so I can watch the sunset from the battlements. It is quite a sight to behold, especially at this time of year. Would you care to join us?
If your cousin is agreeable to it, then nothing would give me greater pleasure, I assure you. A pat, reflexive response. The lie sprung forth from my lips so easily. Truth be told, I couldn't think of anything more irksome than walking around some run-down old building in the company of this scarecrow, whose body seemed so wasted away I found it hard to imagine her capable of standing upright, let alone walking. But I felt guilty for losing my composure in her presence, and there was something about her outspoken manner of speech that intrigued me. The Colonel, for reasons he never bothered to explain, was late for this outing, so instead of visiting the castle, we headed for the gardens, which were closer, so as not to miss the sunset. We walked down a broad path, flanked by chestnut trees, to a clearing, at the centre of which was a lake whose stagnant, leaf-clotted water no longer possessed any transparency. All about lay various statues, mutilated by centuries of wind and rain, blanketed with moss. On one side of the lake stood the ruins of a pagan temple, in which an olive tree had taken root. Huge lizards darted in and out of the cracks etched on the gutted walls.
What a mess. They really let this place go.
I don't know, sir. I find there's something beautiful about this place.
How so, Captain?
The contrasting elements, I suppose.
The false idols of human artifice, overruled by the wild forces of nature that no one man can hold back.
Quite.
Well, I've got to answer my own call of nature. Captain, take my cousin's arms. She's still a little unsteady on her legs, you know.
Don't coddle me. I'm quite capable of standing on my own 2 feet.
Right, as you say.
He treats me like a child, and those other uncouth, small-minded men at the barracks. They're all deferential and polite to my face, but when I'm not around, they make a mockery of my illness. I'm certain of it. They believe I'm acting out of feminine vanity. Don't they, Captain? Don't bother formulating a polite response to that. I can tell by the way your eyes turned away from me that I was right. Tell me, do you find my illness amusing?
Not in the least. I feel awfully sorry for you. Their talk makes me uncomfortable, but I'm afraid I just don't know the right things to say.
I hope that I did not frighten you too much with my wailing and convulsions.
No. I was startled, to be sure, but not frightened. Besides, the Beethoven served to balance things out somewhat, I think. You play rather well, Signora.
You flatter me.
No, I'm quite sincere in saying that. On occasion you press too heavily upon the keys, but otherwise your playing is quite impressively coordinated.
You say that with an air of authority, Captain. Do you play?
No. But then, one does not have to be a trained carpenter to appreciate a sturdy table, or recognise that a table isn't sitting right because one of the legs is shorter than the other.
Music is another method of release for me. All that I cannot express, all that is buried deep within myself, I can only let out that way. Every night my illness only allows me a fitful, restless slumber, and dreams are no consolation, for I cannot control the horrors that besiege my sleeping mind. So often when I lay my head upon the pillow and close my eyes, I see myself sealed within 4 planks, my body slowly decomposing.
Perhaps if you filled your waking hours with beauty, then your dreams would reflect that. Death comes to us all sooner or later, so what's the sense in dwelling upon it? Why, look at that tree over there. That carpet of violets, this sunset. There is so much in life to delight the senses, to fire the imagination.
I noticed that 2 lovebirds carved their names into that tree. Julio for Teresa, happily ever after. I see those words inscribed in the bark, and in my mind's eye are 2 childhood sweethearts, dashing among the paths, hiding themselves amongst the greenery, calling each other's names, chasing after each other, or else sitting amongst the flowers, quietly exchanging confidences. When I was a girl, I loved like that. But then I discovered what love truly was. I once read of a flower whose calyx was dusted with sweet salutary pollen at the top, and a bitter poison beneath. Butterflies that lingered too long died. So it is with the promise of love and beauty in this life.
You've been unlucky, Signora Fosca. But I'm sorry, I can't agree with your assessment. I am convinced that there exists a higher love, something more than mere fleeting sensual pleasure that sours with age. Something that is eternal, the fusing of 2 souls into one.
Have you ever experienced such a love?
No, but I believe I may have come close on one occasion. Even so, I refuse to give up hope that one day I may achieve it.
You are either very cruel or very foolish to speak of hope to me. Look at me, Captain. Look at me and tell me what I can hope for.
Forgive me. I do not intend to be cruel. So I must be a fool then. You have spoken to me with unflinching honesty, and I thank you for your candour, Signora. I merely sought to repay you in kind.
Understood, Captain. I can see that you meant well, really, and you are still less a fool than any other man for miles around, so I suppose I must be content with that. I hope that in the days to come we can talk more like this.
As do I.